Hi, everybody. David Noor. I want to welcome you to this webinar on 2025 year-end relationship regrets. Want to wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. Look at this festive banner I've come up with. Hopefully it's of value, of interest to you, but delighted you're here. And as always, I'm going to do my best to add a ton of value in our time together. We're also live on LinkedIn and YouTube and X. I would welcome you to jump in the chat, in the comments, and share. I'm actually genuinely interested. What industry do you most prominently serve? So we're going to talk a lot about missed opportunities, missed relationship, just chances to leverage those relationships to move key ideas forward in growing your business and growing your revenues and growing your opportunities. So for those of you that may not know either my background or a little more about kind of where I've been and what I've done, for the last really 2 decades, I've been a student of this concept of relationships that should be more intentional, should be more quantified, should be more strategic. Early career in tech sales management, consulting, president of a startup in New York, raised a round of funding. We merged and sold that business. And for the last 2 decades, I've been doing really strategic advisory work for global clients, doing a lot of speaking, a lot of leadership development and executive coaching. And I come at this topic from this lens of relationship economics. And I tell most of my operator friends that I have a whole new level of respect for operators, because as a coach, as a consultant, as an outsider, I can provide a lot of guidance and direction. But until you're in the seat and you're making those trade-offs, you don't really understand the challenges and opportunities and how much demand there is of our time, of our attention, of our bandwidth. So that's really the lens that I'm coming today's session with. And in sharing these insights, what I want you to do is really think about the market that we're all in as if you've ever played a dynamic sport like soccer or hockey or lacrosse. I think this comment will really resonate that 90% of these games are played when you don't have the ball or the puck. And the best teams are comprised of players who are always asking, where should I be? What should I be doing? How do I put myself and our team in the best possible position so when we do get the ball or we get the puck, we can do something with it. We can really create value from it. And I can't imagine a time, certainly in my lifetime, that we've seen this much disruption, particularly for professional service firms. George, delighted that you're here. Thanks for joining. I love George. I've known George for a number of years. I want to say 2 decades, George. And I love that you're coaching private business owners and really preparing them for an exit. That's an invaluable asset. So again, for our audience, if you just joined us, we're talking about 2025 year-end relational regrets. Feel free to jump in the chat, in the comments, and share kind of what industry do you predominantly focus on. But in terms of, again, the market, where should you be? What should you be doing? How do you think about your business differently? I don't know if you've seen this, but CB Insights has an entire report, and I'll share that in the comment with the audience, on is AI dramatically really changing the professional services landscape. So, and you cannot bury your head in the sand and say, this isn't going to impact me or this isn't going to impact my business. Tom is also here. Welcome, Tom. Glad you're here. Early stage revenue growth for software and tech startups. Tom, delighted you're here. So if you look at this chart and if you look at this report, every one of the major consulting companies is either currently in a partnership, has some investments in partnerships and investments, or it's outright acquiring a number of AI native firms and platforms because they realize their business is evolving, their business is changing. So if you're downstream, if you're mid-market from that, how are you adapting? How are you thinking about your relationships differently? How will AI not incrementally, but profoundly kind of change your go-to-market, your value creation, your value add? So in today's session, I want to cover a couple topics. And when I talk about year-end relationship regrets, I want you to think of number one, the problem. We see this all the time. We call it a relationship blind spot. And by the way, every one of us has one. And if you don't think you have one, I have some beachfront property in Arizona I'd like to sell you, because we all do. We all struggle with this. And if you had the better solution this year, particularly again as a professional service firm, but lost because someone else walked in warm, it wasn't luck. I would submit it was visibility. And I'm always cautious about ensuring that people understand this session isn't about tactical sales tricks or prospecting hacks. I think increasingly, those of us that have been around for more than 5 minutes see right through those. I'm going to go one step further. I would submit to you that most of our buyers have a BS radar, and they see right through those kind of hacks, if you will, those tactical approaches. This session is all about strategic relationship intelligence and how, as a firm leader, you need to think about, you need to really understand the missed relationship opportunities this past year and think about them differently going into the new year. So number one, the problem, relationship blind spots. And Kyle is here for our audience. Kyle and I had a good chance to talk earlier this week, coaching and advising small to medium-sized business owners and leaders on their people process in order to maximize performance and profits. Kyle, that's awesome. I'm delighted. He's writing also a book. Kyle, I'm going to need $5 for this plug. He's writing a book. I'm excited that he's going to get his book out this next year. I apologize. I don't know who this next person is, but coaching AI startup software companies to accelerate growth in med devices. That's another great opportunity. So thank you for being here. Thanks for coming. So next, so the problem, relationship blind spot. Next, relationship leakage. I want to talk about what it is and where it happens, because we all have it. By the way, as a side note, 18 degrees, 20 degrees here in Atlanta last couple of days. And if you haven't picked up from my voice, I've picked up a cold this past weekend from all my travel. But one of the concerns you have as a homeowner is a pipe breaking middle of the night, or God forbid, it's leaking in the crawl space in the basement and you don't find it for a period of time. Guess what? That relationship leak causes the same damage in the business. So the sooner you figure it out, the sooner you understand it, the sooner you plug it up, the less of a chance of it creating mold and mildew in your relationships and in your business. So I want you to be proactive and intentional about that. By the way, Ed's here. Love this. Ed and I, oddly enough, know each other through our faith. We were in a Bucket Church group together. So leadership as a service, love that. We give companies access to fractional on-demand executive leadership. Ed, love that. Here's another LinkedIn user. 25 volatility chaos has brought us new clients seeking hands-on guidance, substantial new revenue opportunities for our firm here and abroad. Love it. Love it. Volatility is, by the way, volatility is kind of that spring of net new opportunities. You look it up. Guess when Uber and Airbnb were founded and really started to thrive? Yeah, during the 2008 recession. So when macroeconomic challenges, when volatility, when tariffs, when this preponderance of AI becomes prevalent, that's when founders, that's when really creative people get scrappy and really figure out net new growth opportunities. So on that note, with the first two, I'm going to introduce the 3 revenue gaps as a strategic framework that I want you to think about and really become more intentional as you grow your firm this next year. So again, I've been at this for 23 years, and I don't know about your business, my business right around 4th of July and right around December slows down. I tell clients I'm really cheap right around July and December, because people, vacations and family time and holidays, and that's a fantastic opportunity for some introspection. How was my business? First 6 months of the year. How was my business this past year? Where did my business come from? Where did I miss opportunities? I was talking to a leadership team this past week, and I said something like, have you noticed we all make to-do lists, but very few people ever make stop doing lists, right? So of all the things that went really well for you this past year, where are your growing edges? Where are those opportunities to think and lead differently? Which, by the way, here's a bonus for you. What do winning firms do differently? I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the ones that I've been blessed to get to know or be involved in or work with. They do some really, really interesting work. My friend Rick Diana is here. I loved it. This is, you guys, Rick Diana, you got to meet him. He's the Jerry Maguire for executives, for business leaders. So I love this. He's a talent manager. I take coached up professionals and activate them to sweet spot markets by monetizing their skills, capabilities. I represent a client away. An agent represents an athlete, musician, or actor. The rest of that got cut off. Rick, sorry. But yeah, Jerry Maguire for business relationships. So delighted. Eddie Kubo, my friend, Eddie Kubo's here. Commercial operations lead for MedTech business with portfolio focus on blood, plasma, therapeutics, and cell and gene therapies. Eddie, delighted you're here. So with this agenda, I want you to think about this sport. If you've ever seen a cycling race, I have a question of you. Do you believe this is an individual sport, or do you believe it's a team sport? Sure, you need individual skills and talent. Absolutely. If you can't climb and there's a hill in that race, you're going to struggle. But the best races, the best results often come from a team dynamic. Have you seen a peloton, right? Yeah, absolutely. They put a climber in the front and others, right, follow their slipstreams, or the sprinters, or whatever that respective strength may be. So I want you to think about your go-to-market this next year as a team sport. How do we start to proactively leverage relationships? By the way, relationships you already have. Here's one of the things that I struggle with. I genuinely believe a lot of organizations suffer from what I call new logo-itis. That's right. They all want to chase net new logos. So what do they do in that process? Spray and pray. Let's blast another 10,000 emails looking for the one person that's going to reply. I don't know about you. I don't want to do that. What I'd rather do is tighten that aperture and focus on fewer, but build deeper, more meaningful relationships. And I would submit to you that your relationships are your defensible moat. Because I can always find a cheaper vendor. I can always get a better margin or a better price somewhere else. Everybody talks about great service. And yet, what are you doing to really deepen and nurture those relationships to set yourself apart from everybody else? So let's start with the relationship, the problem, right? I brought it up as the first agenda item, this idea of a blind spot. And I want you to think about that sinking feeling that I'm losing this opportunity, that sinking feeling that they're not returning calls and emails. How many of you have clients or prospective clients that, join the witness protection program, right? And they disappear. You have a really good, one of them emailed me about this webinar, right? Good to hear from you. Can't make today. Would love to reconnect after New Year. What I really wanted to reply is no, thank you. Because friends don't ghost friends. And when I say I want to build deeper, more meaningful relationships, guess what? Relationships by definition are bi-directional. They have to be of mutual value add. So the relationship blind spots you're not thinking about, you know what that looks like? They're not sales problem. You didn't lose to a better proposal. You lost to access and trust. Someone else had better access. Someone else had developed deeper, more meaningful trust. By the way, my longtime friend, Dr. G's here. Dr. G's here. 2025 volatility. Yes. Love that. Dr. G, we've known each other for a long time. Great, great human being doing some really, really interesting work. So I want you to think of this past year. What were some of those blind spots? What were some of those missed opportunities? Here's another one for you. The hidden connection exists a lot of times inside your own firm. I'm telling you, somebody somewhere knows somebody at that account, but they're invisible when you need them the most, right? When you're proposing, when you're trying to get in, when you're trying to differentiate yourself, when you're in a really competitive environment, when you need information. One of my challenges with a lot of professional service firms, a client says how much, they jump through hoops to give you, give a price or give a solution without really understanding why they're doing what they're doing. I learned this. I can't take credit for this. I learned this from a mentor who said, if you don't know enough about their business or what the outcomes they're after before you jump and provide a solution, it is absolutely the knowledge curse. So I want to know not just what they're trying to do, but why they're doing it. I want to know what that outcome is. I want to know how that impacts the long-term viability of the business. So, and I want to know who else they're talking to or considering, or again, what will they value most? Think about it a second. If all of our proposals are pretty similar, how will they pick? I would submit a lot of times it comes down to the relationship, and it comes down to that believability and the trust and the credibility that you understand that problem, you can solve it in a meaningful way, and you're someone I want to work with. Johnny Carson used to have this, he would say this, there's a likability factor to all of us. Who wants to deal with a jerk? Nobody. Beyond your competency, beyond your capability, are you someone that I want to go have dinner with? Are you someone that I want to introduce to my spouse and jointly have dinner with? So really think about those connections. And unfortunately, this example pattern shows up. Like you lose a deal, and then a colleague says, we actually know that person after the fact. I'm like, why didn't you say something earlier? And then it dawns on me, it's not their job to kind of tell me everybody they know. It reminds me of people who reach out for, they want help looking for a job, or they want an introduction. And they always ask me, who do you know? Well, I know a lot of people. Who's most relevant to you? If you do a little bit of due diligence and come up with a list of either target companies or target relationships, it'll probably be a lot more productive. So what you often see is the missing connections aren't just frustrating. They cost real revenues and a competitive positioning. And I know what you're thinking. We have a CRM system. Well, guess what? So do we. And I've long believed, this past year, we've been talking a lot about how CRM has forgotten the R. I used one for 20 plus, it will go unnamed. I used one for 20 plus years, and it got so complicated. I pretty much needed I'm pretty sure I needed a PhD in astrophysics to navigate the damn thing. So we switched to another one. It's just as bad. And a lot of these CRMs track activities. They track events. So I had coffee, I had meetings, I followed up with an email. So what? Are you moving the relationship along a continuum? Are you giving me actionable relationship insights from all that activity? So Chris Vaughn is here. Thanks for coming. Karnak, he was great. That's awesome. Glad you're here. So this idea of we have a CRM, I'm just not convinced that, and I'll show you examples of the CRMs are really letting us down in a meaningful way. So I've been talking about this. I've been advocating for a number of years. Whenever we're faced with a challenge or an opportunity, we often ask, what should we do and how should we do it? We seldom ask, who do we need? So this is a simple example of a relationship mapping that we've used before. You can see I'm at top of the chart. At the very bottom is John Finnegan, the former CEO of Chubb Insurance. Here in Atlanta, I know Raymond King, who's CEO of Atlanta Zoo, who knows Karen Williams, who was on John's board. Forget the Kevin Bacon 6 degree of separation. In business, it's typically 3 degrees away. You're typically 3 degrees away from almost anybody else you need to know. The challenge is we don't ask enough who questions. We don't ask enough who questions. We don't ask enough, how do we connect to these people with unique value add? We don't map these, and we're going to talk more about that in a second. And so the problem fundamentally becomes this blind spot of relationships you don't know you have. I think I mentioned to you guys, I was a guest in a podcast this past week, and one of the examples I posted on LinkedIn as well. I talked to a chief revenue officer, and he had to go into a leadership meeting, and he talked about how they lost a $10 million deal. And the mild-mannered CFO has this real visceral reaction and says, damn it, we should have never lost that deal. And now the CRO is like, well, I'm upset too. What do you mean? The CFO looks at the deal and says, that buyer was in my wedding. If you've been in business for more than 5 minutes, that story makes you cringe because you're like, why didn't they know that? Why couldn't they know that? Think about it a second. Number one, the CFO is not in the company's CRM. Number two, he sure as heck is not putting his wedding party in the company's CRM. You've got a pickleball league. You play soccer with Dennis Sadlowski, plays soccer with friends. And, David Kelly and Brad Lockman, cycle 100 plus miles together weekends. And, right, we have this thing called life outside of work where we have all these contacts. Wendy and I are active in our church, and we're active in a couple of nonprofits. I'm on a couple of nonprofit boards. We're not putting any of those people in the company CRM. So where are they? They're in our phones. They're in emails. They're in Slack. They're in spreadsheets. They're in 50 different places. And we don't have any visibility to how those people might be very relevant to what we're trying to do, very relevant to our goals and objectives. So if the problem is this blind spot of relationships, I would submit to you relationship leakage, right? Relationship leakage is a huge one. So relationship leakage, I'm really curious. What is it? Where does it happen? Why does it happen? How does it happen? That's a huge one. I'm going to post another comment in the chat. I'd love for you to jump in. Have you ever lost a deal and later found out that someone on your team knew a key decision maker? Either type yes or ouch. So I want to know, is this something that you've experienced? So relationship leakage in a company, right? So let's start with, defining it first and foremost. It is a lost opportunity because the firm can't see. You need a line of sight first and foremost. Prioritize or leverage existing relationship capital. People you already know, people you've invested time and effort with, people maybe you've done favors for, people you've crossed paths with. One of the biggest ones, Steve Kirsch is jumping in with ouch, right? This one hurts, right? Because, after the fact, it's painful. Like, why didn't we know someone there? But this happens all the time. You've one of our favorite examples, we call them customer alumni. They were a customer of yours, either in your previous life or theirs. Guess what? You changed jobs, they changed jobs. The relationship grew cobwebs, right? You went your path, they went theirs. You lost touch. But guess what? They know you. They certainly would remember you. If you picked up the phone and called them or reached out, they'd probably re-engage. And hopefully they remember you in a positive way. And yet we leave all those, we forget about all those, and it's a missed opportunity. And then we scratch our heads. Who do we know in that account? Here in Atlanta, who do we know at Delta or Home Depot or UPS or 1,000 and other accounts that, believe it or not, even in this economy, I've been traveling extensively lately. Every one of my flights is packed to the rim, right? I'm like, God bless the local airline because they're doing well. And there's a lot of companies, and even companies within industries are doing really, really well. Who do we know in that account? So where does it come from? Here's some examples. Lost deal leakage. Deals lost to peers who had pre-existing access because they used to work together at that company or a company, because they went to grad school together, because they belonged to that club together, right? It didn't mean my proposal wasn't up to par. As a matter of fact, I've actually seen this. You have a better solution. You have a better proposal. You have a better idea. You have a more innovative approach to solving that problem. And Rick Diana brings an unbelievable executive to the table. but he loses out because someone else has better relationship, deeper relationship, a pre-existing relationship. That's a lost deal leakage. How about a missed warm path? This one also hurts. Introductions that never happen because no one knew. Again, line of sight is the first path, right? Knew they existed or prioritized making them. How often do good friends, I mean, I'm raising my hand right here, good friends with good intentions have every intention of making an introduction. And guess what? They get busy. They get pulled. And I never blame them. They get busy. They get, again, without naming names, there's a very successful entrepreneur here in Atlanta who's had several exits and now runs a venture funds and runs a tech center and, right, well-recognized name, and a really good friend that I've known probably 4 or 5 years. We've traveled together. Our spouses have met. We spend a lot of quality time together. 6 months ago, said, oh, I know him really well. I'm happy to introduce you. I've even brought it up a couple of times. Good intentions. He's busy. He's got a lot of stuff going on. So I can't blame him. You just got to find creative ways, more impactful ways, other ways to kind of find ways, find opportunities to make that introduction, to kind of reconnect. So again, I've got a quick question for those that are here. I'm going to jump in. Here you go. Here's a question for you. Where do you see the most relationship leakage today? Missed follow-ups, dormant champions, committee blind spots, partner relationships. Jump in and with your comment, where do you see the most relationship leakage today in your business? Kyle, yes, number two hits close to home. Kyle, I feel you, man. It's true for most of us. So this missed warm path is the second one. How about invisible influence? Decision makers and those you never mapped. People that you either don't know, again, line of sight is number one, but also mapping those. I'm going to show you an example in a second. So relationships you never map creates these kinds of outcomes. When you plug relationship leakage, right? Here's the results. If you don't do this, you lower your win rate. You create longer sales cycles. Here's what relationship leakage creates, right? You have a greater reliance on founder relationships. And we're talking about mid-market consulting, the executives, the founders, the rainmakers. You're so siloed on just the people those people know. And then these internal silos restrict revenue acceleration. So I love it. Jessica's jumping in. Missed follow-ups. Oh, Jessica, you're going to cringe. I found the paper that said less than 40% of business professionals ever follow up. They never follow. And I'm telling you, I've met a lot. I am one of these people. Hopefully good people, good intentions. There's a stack of business cards. For our younger audience, business cards are these rectangular cardboard things we used to hand out, right? They're sitting on my desk yelling at me, follow up, send me an email, reconnect. And I would submit a lot of these business cards are like fish. After 3 days, I'm not sure they're going to remember you, much less 3 or 6 months ago. So then we feel this guilt of, oh my God, I never followed up. Eddie, same thing, committed blind spots. Yeah, it's absolutely committee blind spots, right? Somebody there that we either didn't know, we didn't think about, or we didn't have access to becomes painful. Dean Noli's here. Dean Noli, good friend Dean Noli's jumping in. Great question. It's when you get out of line, so side to side, so you got to mind, people are busy. So you have to find meaningful way to touch your trusted advisors and customers, your critical opportunities when least expected. Unequivocally. Here's Jeff Gray jumping in, supporting, I think, Jessica Carroll, right? Exactly right. The missed follow-ups. Those are painful. So what happens is all this effort really does restrict all of your revenue acceleration. This relationship leakage, I need you to think of it as a bottleneck to that next level of potential growth for you, your firm, your business. And by the way, this isn't just my opinion. EPSTA, does a lot of really interesting go-to-market research. They did a state of go-to-market report in 2025. And I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anybody that just 14% of sellers generate 80% of the revenue, right? Classic Pareto, right? And if you think of right at the center, the DNA of top performing teams, selling skills, right? You got to have that. A players kind of know they're much better at discovery. Top performers don't really discount because competing on price alone is a losing proposition. Time management, they're phenomenal, right? They spend 2 hours less a day on average, right? On selling. A players manage, right, more pipeline. They automate the manual, mundane work. So time management is a big asset. Pipeline management, they move those deals, those relationships in many ways along a continuum. Look at the bottom right corner, relationships, ongoing engagement with C-suite, right? On average, they engage 8 stakeholders for a new opportunity, 5 for expansion. The reason I've got a white box around it is that I also found a ton of data. Casey Choi is at Gartner, and he validated this, that there's a lot of AI tools and technologies that are automating the other 3. You know what's really creating the separation between phenomenal teams? Increasingly, it's their relationships. And you've heard me say this before. We believe AI is going to go one of 2 ways. Either it becomes Terminator, where I don't need you, or it becomes, we like the second option, Iron Man, and it makes you better at what you do. That's what we're trying to do at Avneer. So how do I really arm you with greater actionable relationship insights so when you do connect, you do it in a meaningful way? And we stop this relationship leakage. We stop these relationship year-end regrets of should have, could have, would have. That just never materialized, right? Ed's jumping in with the committee blind spots. Yeah, that's a painful one. Ed, I don't know about you. Finding out after the fact, like who was that person, or the fact that they didn't like us or didn't believe us, is just painful. Again, Chris is jumping in. Sheer overwhelm, right? Chris, you're not alone. Data, schedule, speed at which most move nowadays, unbelievably fast, right? It's just that sense of urgency all the way around. I apologize. I don't know who this is, a LinkedIn user. Most don't focus on follow-up, lack of discipline, lack of consistency, right? We're going to talk about this. Consistency matters when it comes to certainly relationships a lot more than creativity. People want to get creative and we want to go, with a whiz bang, and we want viral. You want virality? Be consistent. Be consistent, because that consistency is what sets you apart. It's the genius of success, is that consistency, right? So let me talk about the 3 revenue gaps, and I don't think this is going to be a surprise to any of you. The first one is really sight. I've talked a lot about line of sight, which is you have the relationship, you just can't see them. And again, I'm telling you, I'm living through this, and it's painful. I found out after I lost an opportunity that a dad of one of my son's lacrosse player teammates was an executive at that company. And I'm telling you, I used to have a lot more hair. I want you guys to see, I am losing hair at an accelerated pace, because you're like, why didn't I think of that? Oh my God, I know that. We've frozen on the sideline at these lacrosse tournaments with our kids. And we've talked, where do you work and what do you do? But you cannot rely on your memory. So when we say you have the relationships, you just can't see them, right? The result becomes you're trying to reach out cold. That goes nowhere. Let's all agree, cold outreach is dying. How many spam emails do you get a day? And if I don't know you, respectfully, you call me, I'm probably not picking it up. And I think that's true for most people. So problem number 1, revenue gap number 1, is a line of sight into that relationship, into that account that you cannot see. That is a huge blind spot. That's a huge revenue gap. Let's keep going. Here's a second one, activation. In this case, You actually know the name. I know someone. I just can't activate the connection. I can't see the path of how do we know them. Somebody's got to know these people. You remember I told you the Kevin Bacon 6 degree of separation? In business is 3. You're typically 3 degrees away from almost anybody else you need to reach. The challenge is we don't ask enough who questions. Who do we know? And how do we intelligently connect the dots? So again, the results here becomes these dormant advocates and missing leads. You know these connections. There is a connection through Leadership Atlanta, through YMCA board, through the Rotary, through the club I belong through that, kids activities, kids schools, the nonprofits we contribute to year after year, the different industry associations we belong to. And yet we miss that opportunity. Number 3, influence. Again, you don't map actual influence inside that buying committee. Are they an advocate? Are they neutral? Are they potentially a blocker? Are they a detractor? Are they someone that may not even know you, but has a preference for someone else? So what happens is you lose is a competitive disadvantage. If you don't do this, even with a better solution, I'm trying to tell you, I've sat in meetings where I've seen a better solution get presented, but because they don't have an advocate or champion in that room, in that conversations you're not in, they lose that opportunity. And that opportunity more recently has been several $1 million engagements or investments or selection. So what happens is, look at the impact. You've got hidden warm paths turned into closed deals. You've got percentage improvements in win rates when relationship assets are activated. When you do this, when you create these opportunities, when you have sight, when you activate them, when you map that influence, deals shorten when influence map is applied. So I've been talking about the 6 phases of strategic relationships for 2 decades. The best firms, the best individuals inside these firms, they prepare with mapping, left-hand side. They plan, they execute, and that's how they get results. In essence, the far right-hand side is all not about relationship creation. It's about relationship capitalization. It's about how do we become more intentional about these relationships we choose to invest in and get a line of sight into them, figure out how do we activate them most impactfully, and last but not least, how do we create the influence gap? So again, I want to know from you, which gap hurts you or your firm the most right now? Is it the sight gap where you can't see the relationship? Is it the activation gap where you can't leverage them? Or is it the influence gap where you don't know who matters? Which gap is hurting your firm right now the most? Sight gap where you can't see the relationship, activation gap where you can't leverage them, or an influence gap where you don't know who matters? And beyond just the label, I'd really want you to think, why is that? Why don't you have a line of sight? Why can't you leverage the relationships you already have to the ones you need? Why don't you map consistently the influence gap? I've always believed if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. It's worth doing consistently. So again, sight gap, activation gap, influence gap, those are 3 revenue gaps that if you start to identify, you start to plug, I think it's going to really help you. I love George's comment. All three, just sign me up for all 3. All 3. George, you're not alone. Steve, yes, sight map. Steve, just line of sight. Who do we need? Who do we really focus on? How do we prioritize this more proactively, right? You guys are exactly right on. So yeah, please feel free to continue to jump into comments. Let me talk about just a kind of strategic practices. There's another LinkedIn user, sight gap, most likely. Yeah. So I want you to think about these 4. what winning firms do really well, you talk to firms about how they sell, how they go to market, how they nurture relationships, and they often talk about their tactics. Here's what we do, here's how we do it, right? Tactics matter only when you connect to the right relationship. If you're talking to the wrong person, no tactic in the world is going to deliver that result. If they're not an influencer, if they're not an advocate, if they don't believe that relationships is going to set that deal apart, you're barking up the wrong tree. So the 4 strategic practices: number 1, systematic relationship visibility, not just contacts, but a web of influence. I coach this often of we got to get away from these neat buckets and start seeing every deal, every opportunity as this web of relationships. There's people that are highly interconnected. Again, I'm gonna use a personal example, and I'm sure this happens. I don't know if this happened to you or not, but I was recently in a meeting. Have you been around people sit around a conference room, and I show up and there's 2, 3 of us, and there's 7 or 8 of them, and we're talking about this really strategic opportunity, and there's one person that's sitting in a chair, not at the table, but in the corner. And this person was really quiet the entire time. And by now, you know me. I'm not shy. I'm not quiet. So I wasn't about to leave that room to figure out who that person is. So after the meeting, conversation, questions, hour plus, we shake hands. Good to see everybody. Nice to see you. Thanks for having us. And I made a beeline for this person. And I said, I apologize. We didn't get a chance to meet. Nice to meet you. And I didn't catch kind of what you do here. And I got a business card. Special advisor to chairman of the board. Didn't say anything the entire time. Special advisor to chairman of the board on the card. And I scheduled a follow-up meeting, and right? So he was there, very astute. I looked him up, phenomenal background, really intelligent, right? Big strategic background, had a follow-up conversation, highly, highly influential people. And everybody at the table discussed a lot of the mechanics of what we're going to do together and how we could support their efforts. And this person didn't ask anything, was just observing, was taking diligent notes, right? So we had a follow-up. My point is, you cannot ignore that person, number 1. Talk about an influence map. Number 2, if it's a virtual meeting, how do you identify that person that doesn't say anything? How do I identify that influence? If you don't know who that person is, or the things they care about, or things they prioritize, I'm trying to tell you, you're flying blindly. And that's just one example of influence gap. Love this. Eddie's jumping in. Influence gap may lack intel on what are their personal goals and KPIs. Eddie, you're exactly right. And I'm being facetious when I say this, but listen, I appreciate your proposal and your solution, but I have a Wednesday night pickleball league, and the schedule you've proposed kind of conflicts with that. So no, thank you. Right? If you don't know their personal agendas, if you don't know the personal goals, if you don't know what matters to them, again, you're flying blindly. You're making this up from seat of your pants. You're proposing a phenomenal solution that is going to go nowhere. Jessica is jumping in. Love this. Coaching teams to think in terms of networks, not just pipelines. Wow, brilliant way to clearly frame this. Jessica, you might be surprised to hear this isn't my first rodeo. So thank you for that. Very kind. So yes, not just systematic relationship visibility, not just contacts, but a web of influence. Active relationship prioritization. I'm telling you, I used to have a grad school professor, Ben Kaczynski, who would say, hear me now, believe me later. The Dunbar number says that average individuals can proactively manage about 100 to 150 relationships. That's it. That's it. So $1 million questions, which ones? And if you believe that relationships are an investment, you cannot invest in everybody equally. So how will you then prioritize what relationships you're going to invest in? So if you don't prioritize relationships that matter most to revenue, In our small team, we're talking about this daily. So you've heard this concept of ideal customer profile, ICP. For Avneer, for our platform, it's very focused on right now, mid-market consulting. Can we impact a whole lot of other people, particularly at the enterprise? Absolutely. And we'll get there. But at this early stage, I'm taking my bumps and bruises with the mid-market consult, where I can directly impact the founders of these firms who are desperately trying to compete in a very changing market dynamic. And the founders are the rainmakers. So we've internally talked, if they don't fit that profile, probably really nice people, let's stay in touch with them. We'll have a generally available platform where you can go to our website and sign up. We'll do that as quickly as we can. But at the moment, in this early access, we want to focus on that mid-market consulting. So if you don't prioritize relationships that matter most to your revenues, it's a missed opportunity. Warm path activation. They turn internal connections into external access. You know more people than you think you do. We're just really bad at capturing them, identifying them, line of sight, activating them, mapping that influence. And then what Jessica picked up on the last one, behavior habit engineering. How do you coach teams to think in terms of their network, not just a pipeline? Who do we know? Who do we need to know? Who has access? Who's got a line of sight? Who has that connection? How do we have that connection? Again, we're trying to build a platform that brings that front and center. Until such time, this is a really good opportunity to make that an active part of your DNA, an active part of your organization. Are you coaching the team to think about that broader network? So, questions of you. In capturing your 2025 year-end relationship regrets, here's 3. What was the deal this year that still makes you cringe, right? Who in your firm has the most unused influence? And what event or events plural did you sponsor or attend or somehow you invested in and never followed up on? So take a few minutes to really think about these. But what I want you to think about is, and again, I'll put this in the chat for you. If none of us are scalable. So how much of your firm's revenue still depends on you personally? A, too much. B, some, but improving. C, very little. If you're the bottleneck, if you're the chief rainmaker, whether you're Eddie Kubo and you're leading this business, if it relies so much on you, that's a weakest link, that you're not scalable. And God forbid, whether you win the lottery or you get hit by a bus or you decide not to show up the next day, the business is in trouble if you're the single point of contact, if you're the single source of that incoming revenue. So we've got to start thinking about a broader network, a broader set of relationships that can proactively, intentionally manage these. So again, I don't want to make this is not a sales pitch. We just want to give you a glimpse into what we're doing. Yesterday there is this input source. There's a system of record, some sort of CRM system. There's a predictive model and some sort of output. We're trying to reinvent that input and output with AI orchestration, which is how do we get a library? How do we develop a library of AI agents that understand, execute, and improve on a series of relationship development best practices? So hopefully in a clean, elegant way, we're trying to think very differently about this with that relationship economics lens. For example, we all live, I just want to give you a glimpse into a few of them. We all live in these, we call relational ecosystems at work. And by the way, this isn't one size fits all. Relationships have these really interesting nuances. So at work, I have customers, I have some internal relationships, I have prospects. there's industry people that I know, there's partners, and I'm fairly active in several nonprofits. But it doesn't stop there, because I also have a whole bunch of personal ecosystems, right? I've lived in Atlanta for 40 plus years. So I've got Atlanta peeps, past colleagues, friends, educational alumni, undergrads, grad school. Our faith is pretty important to us. And some of you know, I ride motorcycles. So there's a whole bunch of motorcycle community, including executives, that I'm learning that, ride. And as I share more with this, we're getting more of a group rides together when it's not 20 something degrees outside, right? So number one is this idea of relationship ecosystem. Here's another one for you. This idea of a relationship continuum. So we've identified, look at this, 10 unique phases that a relationship goes through, from an initial contact, right, all the way through acquaintance, casual, functional, stakeholder, right, partner. Somebody becomes a friend. Again, many of you on this call are a friend. Eddie Kubo and I have had scotch together, right? We've met each other's spouses, and they become friends. They become strategic. They become, right, trusted advisors. They become a lifelong ally. So not necessarily sequential, but if a relationship is stuck for a period of time in one phase, what do you need to do to move it along a continuum? So we're actually based on several attributes. We're trying to calculate a relationship score. We're trying to predict where the relationship is on this continuum. More importantly, what is it going to take to move it to that next level? How do we deepen? And by the way, you cannot force this. I got to admit, it's been a few presidents since I've dated, but I remember dating someone, trying to date someone who didn't want to date you, right? It's an uphill battle, and I don't think anybody wants to do that. So I said earlier, relationships are reciprocal. Relationships have to be of mutual perceived value. So if people are not returning calls, if they're not returning emails, if they're not adding value, and again, you got to take it upon yourself. Am I adding value? Here's a really good question to ask. How's this person better off because we're in a relationship together? So that becomes really critical. Jeff Green is jumping in. In hiring salesperson, is connections and industry more important than sales skills aptitude? Jeff, that's a great question. I don't know if it's more important because that connection is way too vague in way too many organizations. You've heard somebody say this. And Jeff, you're going to love this. As we get to know each other better, I often tell people I'm allergic to vagueness. You interview a sales rep and they say, I've got a great relationship with American Express. I don't know about you. I don't know what great means, right? So, I'm often, I'm convinced I was born in Missouri in a previous life because I often say, show me. Show me. And we're trying to build this, by the way, in our platform with this relationship score. So that imagine that same candidate showing you their Avenir platform where they have a 94 score. I know what that means out of 100 with American Express. But hold on, not just the company, because relationships are not between buildings and logos. I want you to double click on American Express and show me the functions. Are your relationships in marketing or are they in legal? Are they in IT or are they in purchasing, right? So now imagine at a functional level, but don't stop there. Double click on each of those functions and let me see where in that function do you have the best relationship. Are you at the end user level, which is great if I'm selling a product-led growth or something that users can recommend, or is it really at the most, executive level at that function? Because now I can see demonstrably that they've been a customer, they've been a repeat customer, you've been working with them for, some duration of time, you've worked with them in multiple jobs. Do you see how now I can add relationship depth to it and relevance to it and health to it? Those are typically the three things that are missing from most relationship conversations. You don't know how long they've known someone, you don't know how well they know them, and you know how relevant that person is to what you're trying to do. So I would dig a little bit deeper into those three attributes of the connection. The sales skills, the aptitude, I can teach. The other thing that, Jeff, I want you to think about, give me the willingness and I can always raise their ability. But if the willingness is not there, neither me, you, or Jesus is going to be able to make a difference. So it's amazing how often we talk about relationships. We never interview for them. In your interview process, do you ask relationship questions? Do you ask for examples? Do you ask for relationship references? I want to talk to a customer of yours, if they're in sales, that has been a customer more than one job. One client has hired me in 4 different companies. Nobody does that if you're not adding value, if you're not dependable, if you're not trustworthy, if you're not reliable, if you don't create outsized value, right? So we jokingly talk about relationships are important. We don't include them in our interview process. We don't include them in very few, anybody's metrics. We certainly don't include them in anybody's compensation, or if it is, it's marginal at best. So these are the things that I try to change in organizations when we work with them. Chris says, LOL, I'm from St. Louis. Glad you're here. Glad you're jumping in. So what's next? In terms of, again, that's relationship continuum. In terms of what's next, one, we'll send you a follow-up email. We've actually created a new relationship assessment. Sarah's joined our team, and I love the woman professionally, and she's doing some really amazing work for our team. But we've built a new relationship assessment. We want you to take it because I think it's going to highlight you personally, your team. It's free. It's going to highlight some really interesting, I think, insights in how you think about relationships. Visit avnirinsights.com, plural. You can see what we're building. If viable, you can request early access. Again, I'm saying this respectfully. We're a small team, and building Avnir, we're trying to really focus on mid-market consulting firms right now, and we need early access partners who are going to give us input. We've got 15 so far that we're working with. We need people that are going to give us input on what do you like, what don't you like, what do you want and need the platform to do more and less of. So if it's viable for you, if strategic relationships are a priority for you, we'd love to work with you in the new year. Right now, we're scheduling onboarding the next set of clients for about mid to late January. So we'd love to talk to you more about that. And last but not least, I'm going to continue these. The next one, mark your calendar. Tuesday is January 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern. I believe that's the 16th. I might be way wrong. It might be 13th. I don't have an immediate calendar in front of me. I might be wrong on that one. But that second Tuesday in January, 1 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to do another session on a renewed commitment, almost like a relational commitment at the onset of the year. Now, you know me by now. This isn't going to be a treadmill or a new gym membership where you make a commitment and you forget all about it. This is going to be something we're going to reinforce hopefully throughout the year. Several of you have asked about the early access partner program. You obviously you can influence our roadmap. You gain a massive first mover advantage. You get a dedicated onboarding and support team, optional access to Avnir University. We've also built a 90-day relationship economics coaching that we include with every early access partner program. It's you can pick any of those. We've got a beta test agreement, and we schedule something we call chair sit or value engineering session with you, where we go through and really talk through what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. Andrew is asking, Andrew's got a great question. As someone entering commercial real estate postgraduate, what is your advice to turn my connections from high school, college into warm professional relationships? Andrew, great question. Put commercial real estate in the back burner for a second. Reach out to them, connect. Part of the world I come from, it's never about the meal. It's always about the value that you add. So if you connect over a cup of coffee or a meal and ask about their priorities, and I'm telling you, this is a fantastic time of the year. So tell me about your priorities for next year. Tell me what's most important to you next year. Tell me how I can be an asset. Tell me how I can help you. Now, Andrew, what you do not know, or you may not know, is there's 3 fundamental laws in any relationship. Number 1 is gratitude. You do something for somebody, they should say thank you. Number 2 is reciprocity. You do something for somebody, they should say thank you. What can I do to help you? Number 3 is paying it forward. We all need to see other people that we invest in, likewise invest in their relationships. So when somebody says, Andrew, thank you very much. I appreciate you helping me. What can I do to help you? That's when you can position, listen, I'm in commercial real estate. Would love to, hear from you, of anybody you hear, anybody you know that might be looking for office space, might be moving, might be coming into town. I'd love to talk to them. Andrew, we all know way too many commercial real estate agents. What sets them apart is they build phenomenal relationships. So I hope that's been useful to you. There's a LinkedIn user, 13th, from Rick D. Rick Diana, 13th. Awesome. And then let's see. Jana Hill, retirement strategy special, 113. 113. Thank you. You guys are telling me, yes, it is January 13th. I had my dates off. So January 13th, mark your calendar. January 13th is a Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'll do a follow-on webinar on your relationship commitments. Let me close with this. This is one of my favorite slides. The illiterate of the 21st century aren't those who can't read or write. It's going to be those who cannot learn, unlearn, relearn. Learn, unlearn, relearn. I know you get relationships are important. I want you to think about their significance. And at Avenir, we're building something really special that I hope you'll come along and be a part of this journey with us. On behalf of our team, thank you. Eddie Kubo, you're the best. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for coming here. Happy holidays to everybody. I hope this has been useful to you. Avenir Insights, plural.com is the website. I hope you'll check it out, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy New Year to you. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody. All the best. Bye-bye.